Hello and welcome to Euphoria. In this video, we'll be continuing my series on the design and build of a LEGO modular building, in this case the new Town Hall building for my LEGO city. Today, we'll be looking at the procurement phase, in which we obtain all the LEGO elements we need to build this MOC and get ready for the build itself. This MOC has now completed several stages of design, which we've looked at in previous episodes in this series, and it's very clear now about how it's going to look and how it will be built. So now we've completed the design, we come on to the last three phases. These are the procurement phase, the build phase, and the review phase. The procurement phase logically comes after the design has been finished. Before we can build this MOC out of actual LEGO, we need to obtain the parts we need, and that's what I mean by procurement. Of course, if we had a massive collection of pieces, it might be possible to build a MOC from pieces we already have. And for small MOCs, we might already have quite a few of the pieces needed to build it. But this MOC is nearly 5,000 pieces, so I'll need to buy most of them. I'm not going to describe all the orders and hauls that I've made to buy the parts for this MOC. That's because each of them would be quite boring, so as a quick reminder, this is the model that we'll be buying the parts for. This town hall is quite traditional in style, with a stone foundation, a brick facade, classical proportions, and a sloping roof. The building will be quite large compared with the standard LEGO modular buildings, and built on a 64 stud wide base plate and be 3 stories high. At the front is the impressive portico and front entrance, with the entrance hall giving access to the main parts of the building on the ground floor. At the back is a rear entrance and a stairwell that connects the stories of the building, and there are wings on either side on the ground and first floors. There's also a lower ground floor or semi-basement, which raises the building up and provides some storage and utility space underneath. For this MOC, I'll use the same basic procurement process that I've used before. If you're interested in finding out more about that, then you can find it described in other videos on this channel, the main ones being one episode in the series about building the old astronomical clock tower MOC, and the other one is the Ensgrave building MOC. Those videos cover the process I use for procurement, including the following topics: making the parts list and checking the list for part availability and price, or any duplicate or similar parts, deciding where to get the parts and selecting suppliers to source them from, purchasing, that is, placing orders or otherwise buying the parts, receiving and checking those orders, checking through and updating what is still left to purchase, and when all that's complete, preparation for the build. For example, getting all the parts ready and making instructions if necessary. So here we won't describe the whole process again in detail, we'll just try to cover the key points for this MOC. The first step is deciding what to buy. For this MOC, because I designed it in the Studio program, it was relatively easy to export the parts list from the program. There are ways to do this directly into your Bricklink account online, but I wanted to go through a manual step first, as I'll explain. As I showed you in the previous video on the final design, when placing the furniture in the model, I made it all red colour. I did that because when I export the parts list, I can then more easily see which parts are just for the furniture and which are the parts needed for the building, structure and fixtures. As you saw in the previous video, much of the furniture for the MOC will be obtained from the parts of the Lego office set, so I don't need to try and buy all those parts. Similarly with the minifigs for this set, I didn't try to include them in the design model because I already decided where to get those from, so I didn't need to worry about them during the procurement of the parts for the build. I also wanted to mark up the parts list with those parts that I already had, so that I didn't need to buy them. There are ways to do that inside Bricklink, for example, but I found it easier to do it in a spreadsheet. There are several ways to go about buying Lego bricks for a MOC, as I've described in previous videos on the topic. One option is to purchase Lego sets and use the pieces from those sets to build a MOC, but those are unlikely to meet all the requirements of a new design unless it's been specifically designed to be a rebuild of an existing set. Another option is to buy individual pieces from websites like Bricklink, BrickOwl or Lego Pick-a-Brick. You may also be lucky enough to find some of the parts you need on the pick and build wall at a Lego store. And of course, if you happen to already have the bricks in stock, then you can use those. I've used all of these methods in sourcing the parts for this MOC. By far the majority of the parts have been bought from Bricklink stores, but I've also used Lego Pick-a-Brick and even managed to find some of the parts on the pick and build wall at Lego stores. This is quite a large model, both in terms of size and the number and type of parts. So how many parts do I need to build this Town Hall MOC? Well, it turns out for the main structure of the building itself, I need over 4,600 parts of 134 different types, and taking into account the different colours that I need, that makes 357 element and colour combinations, all of which have to be sourced in the right quantities. Now, I've found when looking at the parts list, and this is another advantage of having it listed out, I found that occasionally I'd used a part in the design that isn't available in a certain colour. But mostly I avoided this mistake during the detailed design process by checking part availability as I went along. If I did make this mistake, then I usually corrected it by changing the type of part rather than changing the colour. However, there were some examples where I'd used a part that was available but was very expensive. For example, the design uses a brick that's 1 by 6 studs in medium blue, and that part does exist, but it's not available from Lego, and it costs £2.68 each from Bricklink. I'd used some of those in the design, so I changed them up for a brick that's 1x4 and 1x2, which are readily available and relatively cheap. I'd also used some bricks 1x1x5 in the design, but there are different varieties of those brick available. There's one with an open stud at the top that's about 30p each brick, and if I need 37 of those, that's £11.10 just for those bricks. But if I change that out for the same design but with a solid stud at the top, those are only 6p each, so I can buy the same 37 bricks for £2.22. It turned out that I used the expensive one, so that was easily changed in the model, and that saves me about £9 on the cost of the build. I'd also used several plates 2x14 studs in white, which are available, but again they're expensive, and they weren't structural, so it was easy to change those out for a 2x8 plate plus a 2x6 plate, which are much cheaper. There are so many variations of bricks and different types of bricks available that if I was doing this again, I would probably build what's called a custom palette in Studio and only use bricks from that palette, which would then ensure that I wasn't inadvertently choosing different variations of the same brick. I'll definitely try that trick out for the next mock design. In this video, I'm not going to describe the mechanics of actually buying the parts. There are other videos on my channel that already describe the process, including using the parts lists and selecting stores, finding the parts on lego.com and making shopping carts and so on. If you do want to see more detail on the ordering process, then there's more detail in my previous procurement videos, such as the one for the old astronomical clock tower MOC. There are several thousand parts just for the structure of this building, so I've had to place quite a few orders. Fortunately, I've been collecting parts for this MOC for some time, because I started early with the structural design. As I was changing the design, it did mean that I ended up with some of the wrong parts, or more than I need of some types. But it does mean I've been able to spread the cost to take advantage of special offers and get some of the parts from the pick-a-brick wall, where they're a lot cheaper, and take advantage of LEGO VIP points and special offers. So when the orders are delivered, I unpack them, I sort them out and check them over to make sure that what I ordered has been delivered, and I put the relevant parts into project trays for this project. Obviously, if I'm ordering parts for another project as well, then they go into the trays for that project. So this is what nearly 5,000 pieces looks like. Each of these storage boxes contains 4 trays with compartments, all of which contain different sizes and colours of parts. And there's not just a few in each one, they're all pretty full up with pieces. Plus we have the 2 base plates for the foundation, and some of the larger plates that don't go into any of these trays. So for example, this tray contains the several hundred pieces in medium nougat that I need for all the external walls. This tray contains the various slope pieces that I need for the different areas of the roof. Here we've got well over 100 window frames in different sizes, all stacked neatly in the trays, ready for use. In these trays we've got all the other shapes and colours of bricks that I need, both for the exterior and interior walls. Here are some of the larger plates used for the floor plates in the building, and here we've got all the other smaller plates and detailed pieces that I need for other parts of the building, the frieze and the internal walls. And you might be able to spot here I've got the clock face pieces for the clock tower. And I've even included a brick separator. So this should be a complete kit for building the whole MOC. Now all I've got to do is work out how to put all this together according to the final design that I showed you in the last video. And of course the build will be the next episode in this series. I've also taken the furniture I want to use from the office Lego set and put those aside here for use in the interior of the building. As you can see, there's quite a lot of office furniture in that set, and that's why I wanted to use it. And I described how I'm going to use it in the previous episode in this series, describing the final design. I've also been buying the parts to make some additional items of furniture, including an additional manager's desk and some filing cabinets, and these will also go into the final build of the model. Similarly with the minifigs, in the last video I showed you the minifigures that I want to use from the office set, which provides most of the office workers and staff to populate the rooms and spaces in the building when the MOC is all built. The city already has a mayor represented by this minifig, which is the Mayor McCaskill minifig from set 70904. We'll appoint a caretaker for the building and a chef nearer the time that the building is ready to use, but I've already managed to buy those minifigs with this MOC in mind. Now, the other part of this procurement phase is planning and preparation. I need to find time and some space to actually undertake the build. It might be frustrating having to wait to start the build, but that's probably less frustrating than starting it, then realizing that I don't have a certain part and I can't proceed with the build. Ideally, I would also make instructions for the build. I did some instructions for one of my other MOCs, and I found that very useful, especially for things like complex floor patterns. But I also found it very time-consuming and very prone to error. So for building this MOC, I'm going to try to build it more or less directly from the design model on the computer. So that's about it for the procurement phase for this Town Hall MOC. This is quite a large MOC for me, and there's quite a lot of parts, so it's taken me a while to obtain everything I need to build it. But now that I have all the parts, I can finally move on to the exciting part of actually building this MOC. That will be the subject of the next episode in this series. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to this channel to make sure that you don't miss out on any of the updates on this project, or indeed any of my other MOCs or my LEGO City.